Never, ever, ever let anyone write the ending to your story.
I love that. Say that again so my audience can hear that.
Sure. Never, ever, ever let anyone write the ending to your story.
Welcome to the Fearless Happyness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happyness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. It's Max from the Fearless Happyness Podcast. And today I know I tell you guys every time that I have an amazing guest, but I really do have another amazing guest today who is joining me from Ohio. But what I like to do, Jan, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then we are going to rock and roll.
Let's do it. A warm hello to you, Max, and to all of your listeners. It's a snowy day here in Ohio, and our hearts are with all of those who are struggling with the fires. We're really with you in spirit and wish we could do more, but we are praying regularly and fervently. I'm Jan Schwartz, and I am a forensic behavioral scientist. I also serve as president of a nonprofit, not-for-fee investigative firm by the name of Forensic Fraud Research. I perform white-collar organized crime investigations. I'm also an author and a speaker, but in my work regarding white-collar organized crime, I do frontline activities and undertake projects that contribute to the realm of intelligence and helping to strengthen our country. But I didn't just start at that role by any means. In fact, when you hear that I'm a former elementary teacher, and yes, kindergarten,
Oh, wow.
first grade, okay. As I was telling you moments ago, it has been a journey, and maybe there was a hint of it when I grew up in the Chicago area, because I had a fascination. I remember looking at the Chicago Tribune on, on the coffee table. And there would be a picture every Sunday of Mayor Richard Daley. And beside him were gentlemen wearing fedoras. And of course, Mayor Daley wore fedora. And they were all stern-faced. And there was a respect. When people saw that picture, it was like a comforting scene that, okay, Mayor Daley has it all under control. And because the outcome of knowing that he was respected was the fact that people continued to go downtown regularly. And I grew up 16 miles west, could hop on a bus, could hop on the L. I could go to the Chicago Public Library to work on a paper in high school. And my parents didn't have one worry in the world. Now, that's an unusual thing to hear today when we know how the world is and how communities have changed, whether it's Chicago or any other city. But back then, I was really moved by the fact that Mayor Daley commanded that respect, and there were myths about him. So I just want to mention that, because little did I know that was an imprint on me. And at the same time, though, I was growing up in an environment where I went to a Lutheran elementary school, and the teachers there were of such an exceptional nature. They welcomed and loved their students to such a degree and nurtured them with such genuine caring that I felt the exact presence and of their love represented God's love. And so sometimes homes cannot give the kind of love that each one of the children in the family need.
Right.
And it was that way in my family. But the teachers seemed to know, and they seemed to understand. And in each class, they would come around to put their arm around me or give me extra leadership opportunities or extra projects to do. And this was how I was raised as well, in contrast to understanding the power and the majesty of growing up in such a community, a milieu. Chicago is such a multicultural and it's such a metropolitan area, but I also had this underpinning of spirituality. And so that has been my center. And I grew up feeling that God was my father, but I meant and I felt that he was my father. So these are key things to understand about me when we see how my work has evolved or the projects that I've taken and my approach in all of the work in facing security incidents and things like that. But let me now bring this closer to home. So as I mentioned, I became an elementary teacher, went on to grad school to become a family psychologist, and my postdoctoral internship was with criminal kids at a residential treatment facility, and that taught me what normal was. And I began to get a composite and understanding of what it took to create a criminal. And I was fascinated by it. And I loved being able to be front line with them and to bring them into a close connection, close relationship, them and their families. So when I relocated to Northeast Ohio to marry my husband, I was so excited to have the opportunity to open a free family therapy clinic because I just had this heart of love that I wanted to share with everyone. And I was going to do it in an unusual way. And there were plenty of people eager to do that. However, another door opened when more and more people came to me, knowing they could trust me, with stories, unbelievably dark stories of very peculiar activities. And I knew this was not normal. And these were dark secrets. And I was eager to open my practice. And yet somehow the realtor never showed up to tell me about how I could rent that space. And here more and more people were saying, could you meet me over here? I want to give you this information or these documents. So, you know, how this is how God works, right?
Right.
We know this is how he leads, and he pulls together all of the facets of our personality. So security incidents started to happen, and they were serious ones. And it progressed to the point where I received a visit from a Fortune 500 company chairman of the board, his two sons, and their mafioso, and they wore fedoras. Okay, and I was interrogated for 25 minutes. They wanted to know what I was doing in their community and what family I was representing. So this was the most shocking, astonishing experience that someone would come to me saying, what are you doing here? And I stood up my 5'7" tall and I had on my highest 4-inch heels. Sorry, ladies, some of you with 5-inch heels are way beyond me. But all joking aside, I just looked at them and I said in no uncertain terms who I was and what I was doing in the community and that this was not normal. And I learned the next day that I had been cleared. But the important thing from this shocked me to such degree that the stories I had been hearing must have been very, very seriously true, or I would not have stirred up that much commotion in the dark community, should we say.
Right.
So from that point on, I started pounding the pavement, as I say, and began to research and knew that I had to do this thoroughly and quickly. And so I eventually reached out to the authorities. And interestingly, the documentation was important to state and federal officials. And soon I was regularly sharing large boxes of data. So this is how I entered this very unusual path of behaving close to an agent or perhaps a supervisory agent, and having the ability to go in perhaps even more deeply than a federal or state official, because here I was president of a nonprofit, not-for-fee investigative firm. But I had a heart and I had a commitment to good. And I also love connecting to people. And so it's now 32 years later. And using my forensic and psychology expertise, I've compiled data for and provided information to the Haida Money Laundering Division of the FBI in Manhattan, Washington, D.C., CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the U.S. Department of Justice's Justice Television Network, National Science Foundation. I could go on, 32 years.
That's a long time, right?
So I guess, yes, and I share that with you because all of those projects led to other things. And then when we start, and you know this, Max, and perhaps some of your listeners know this, that we get other opportunities extended to us as we move along the way. And so writing the psychological profile of a spy, which was a chance for me to understand how America's first spies were chosen, and to find the documents and the activities, the book that had the activities that each one of these individuals was sent out to do to see if they would qualify for this. So that came. And then I did a project, Overcoming Resistance on the local level. And these activities then blended me into the realm of intelligence and Homeland Security. But did my teaching years or my years of working as a child, adolescent, and family psychotherapist, were they wasted? Not at all. Because you see, I was using them. And I'm sure that you know that, because right. It's the same with you. So this is the wonderment of how our lives progress.
I love it, because like as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, she lives growing up in Chicago, right? Which, yeah. Right. And Chicago is associated with the mafia. You know, I mean, you always hear about Al Capone and sure. all of them, you know, that were right out there. And then you go to Ohio to help yes. families, and you get grilled by, yes. you know, by these mafiosos and a Fortune 500 CEO. And you're like, this is what I grew up watching. Like, you landed in it without even like,
yes.
And so,
yes,
those are probably those nudges that God said, okay, yeah. you're great at this, but I'm going to steer you over here because they need your help over here. Right.
And hey, you know, and there's a little bit more to add to. Imagine my persona. So here I am making these meetings with federal agents, or as my work in the years went by, I had my own style of, I'm a more dressed up person, and I like being with people who like being who they are. So whether they're in pants and a sweater, whether they're in sweats and a cap, whether they're in a suit and a tie, those are things that are just a representation of what they felt like wearing that day. I just judge people by who they are as they speak in their heart and where our communication is going. So I just shared who I was in all of these settings. But while I was wearing my heels and my suits, and I was also coming and pulling into the room 6 to 10 to 12 boxes of data. So you have to understand that I must have looked a sight, especially since, please do not think that I was this sophisticated lady that had the best boxes in the world no, not at first. I was trying to camouflage them so that I wouldn't be noticed. And so I would try to maneuver carefully and looking like there was always something out of place with me. But I had my heels on, and I had determination and grit, and my documents said it all. So that's how the energy started, and I began to get a reputation for, oh my goodness, I heard that she visited you last week. Well, how many boxes did she bring to
Right.
or if someone would come to come to meet in my location, I would say to them, all right guys, I've been working on this for 6 months. That entire side of the table is yours. Let's begin. And they would look at me like, what? Because I had all of these stacks. And so again and again, it was, okay, Jan, you started another project. You started another case. So I began the boldness. You say, what does fearless mean? Okay, in this work, Max, fearless, I inhaled courage. I exhaled doubt. And into every meeting, and remember, there's a lot of prejudice against bonds. Oh my goodness!
I was just going to say that as you were coming up in that work, and back then, and I mean, like they're looking at you like she's going to tell us how to do our job, and you're like, yes, I am, because I've been doing. But I mean, let's talk about those challenges and how you overcame that, because I'm sure you got looks and snide remarks and the whole 9 yards,
rejection. They wanted, the rejection is, I've had so much on paper. If you were to peruse my work and all of that, you say, oh my goodness, she's done all of this. What that is not talking about is all the rejections between those moments, and how does one manage that? And I look back, and I cannot say enough about viewing and the center of my being, how much I value my faith and the trust that I have that God was leading me to my purpose, and I wasn't seeing other people doing this work in the same way as I. And what I mean by that, I was not coming across with fire and brimstone.
Right.
I was coming in, with an interest in connecting to these offenders. So when I would make an appointment because remember, I'm interested in both sides of the story, as I would say, but my approach to it is going to be a blend of all of my roles that I've been in my life, right?
Right.
And with my faith as my center. So I never deceived. I never said, well, I'm going to do this. I just would call them up and say what my work was, and that I regretted, but I said, regretfully, I need to inform you that a complaint has been filed against you. And they're like, what? Well, who are you? And I said, so there were times when I did want to laugh, but I really said it kindly but firmly. And I said, I'm Dr. Janet Schwartz. I'm president of Forensic Fraud Research. There have been complaints. Now there are several, and I would like to make an appointment with you to learn more about your feelings and your side of the story. And after 2 or 3 minutes of having them realize that I wasn't going away, but I was not also coming across as judgmental. Okay, this is how I was trying very hard to step between the rejection and the bias against someone who is wearing a dress or a suit and heels that they may want to push aside. But I was persistent and also caring and saying, something must have made you do this. How could you have achieved to this point in your life and you made this choice? Right. What on earth happened? Okay, so you see, what I was doing was I was trying to bring to them an energy where, would you please consider coming closer to my wavelength? Would you please see how what your choices have been about are affecting others? And here's what I'm now going to need to do. And so what I would add to the statement at the end was, okay, thank you very much for your openness, your authenticity. May I ask for one thing more? I really like walking away from these meetings knowing that something's going to change here. So what gift will you give to me today? Not just me, but it'll help your staff. It'll help your company. It'll help and they, I'll tell you, there were many, many times where they, made comments that were very unpleasant, like, this has got to stop. You've no business saying that to me. Oh my goodness. Please don't misunderstand me. That is not why I'm here. So in each situation, I kept focusing on them and just like with my criminal kids, putting together that puzzle of what makes a criminal. And here I was right in front of, and still to this day, when I put my handshake, I'm looking at them thinking, what was it that put you into that category and made you go that way? Because just like in those meetings in the beginning, the same thing is today. I can sense that they're longing to have a loyal friend. They're longing to have meaningful connections instead of just connections that are the glue from the corrupt activity, right, or the pretending or the do-gooding and all of this that's going on, and all the false loyalty, when they know there's a great risk that the whole thing can light up like a fire, or the domino effect, and all go downhill. So the rejection and overcoming the bias, the documentation always worked. And I worked also hard to ignore any comments. And there was, at that time, 32 years ago, there was training in sexual harassment. And they always made sure there were two agents in a room, or if I happened to be at a meeting and we would be out having coffee or something, there were several people around. So I always kept it to the most professional situation. And then when it was over, then I would to manage my own emotions coming down from the energy required, to do this.
Right.
I would write every detail, thinking that someday I'm going to want to think about why that meeting worked so well. And I'm going to want to know those exact words. And so I'm able to use those quotes now to help other people. And I also, there's an important thing to share with you, that I have this saying, these self-statements, and perhaps you and your listeners have a collection of your own, but never, ever, ever let anyone write the ending to your story.
I love that. Say that again so my audience can hear that.
Sure. Never, ever, ever let anyone write the ending to your story. And what I have learned about rejection is, while it stings, it sure does. While it is also embarrassing, because others can see that, boy, we got her this time. Maybe we knocked her down. We haven't heard anything for 6 weeks, but they then realize, oh my goodness, she's back, stronger than ever, and she's not bearing a grudge. and I didn't, and I don't, because I view it all as training. And that, I hope, answers how I have been able to cope with tremendous, and there has been tremendous, well, there's been great progress and unusual surprises. The steps to get to those surprises for anyone are days upon days of it not working out. And the funny thing about life is that sometimes our friends and family can do things that really hinder our progress. And so they say things like, and maybe your listeners have had this, maybe you've had this happen. Well, I hope you've learned now. I hope this is the final time.
Right.
You are going to put yourself and go in front of that committee. And don't you realize you're never going to make a difference? Those people are always going to have a way to deliver envelopes and this or that. And I would just say, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but for some reason, I feel a little differently from that. Right. And I just have to be who I am. Thanks for understanding, and they really got tired, and they found all of my uphill battles to be fatiguing. And I really think that's an important stage and a process for families who are watching. I've had 3 lives in one, and so like, why is she my relatives are like, why aren't you traveling? why aren't you just gardening, or just doing feeding your deer and doing all of that? And I would just say, because I have a heart, I have a mind, and I have a spirit that just has such a caring for humanity. I cannot stop. I cannot stop. And so now here it is at this stage of all of this transformation, and people believing in me. As we know, with no one moves forward in life, especially in something when you're counter culture. And what I mean by counterculture is when I'm standing up for principles and for decency and for treating others in a way that is fair and wanting people to be held accountable, I'm counterculture. And people are saying, well, I can't do that because, you see, I could lose my job and then I'm not going to have health care for my family.
Right.
And then, and so another way I have managed that is I just nod my head and say, I understand. So I have coped by working very hard to not be judgmental, to try to look at each person as to what have they been through that made them feel that they had to resort to this, instead of relying on the gifts that they have been given. And so I share that with you, and I hope something resonates with.
Absolutely, because I can relate. It's like working with someone in substance abuse, right? You can't judge a person by the way they're behaving early in recovery or like during detox. 1, they don't feel good. 2, we don't know their backstory yet on why they got there. And hearing your story, I was listening, and you remind me, like, okay, of Michael Jordan's story, right? Where all the shots he talks about that he doesn't really, the tens of thousands of shots. That's your story, right? Like, you kept going no matter how many times you got rejected, because you were on let's say a mission to do something good in this world, and it wasn't going to let you, you weren't going to let it stop you. And, yes. and I relate to you in that. It's like every client that I get the honor of working with, I like to say, is different, yes. right? And I've worked with veterans, I've worked with ex convicts, I've worked with homeless, but I'm like you, because I see her, she's got a big smile, everybody, and just she's lighting up the room. And I'm like you. I believe that all of us are good. Like, we come into this world as a good human being, right? And circumstances happen. And like you said, how you asked them, like, how did you come to this point? Like, what were the things that happened that made you decide to, let's just say, do something against the law, correct?
Yes.
It's the same way with, like, what happened in your life that you felt that taking drugs or alcohol is going to help fix it, right? And as we know, I'm sure you know that most people that get addicted to alcohol or drugs usually have some type of trauma associated with that, right? But listening to your story, I'm thinking, like, she's right. Like, I don't just learn something once and then that's how I do it, right? I'm always learning how to work with someone, because you have to meet them where you're at. Just because, like, hearing your story and how you work with these individuals is you're meeting them as like one human to another. You're no judgment. Let's just figure this out so I can help you possibly, right? And get you back on the right track. But at the same time, like, I understand that rejection, when it's not a rejection, but how do you put it? Like, how do I understand that feeling is like when you work so hard but they decide to leave treatment and go use again. You're like, it breaks your heart. You're like, you want to grab them and hug them and say, no, you don't have to do that. But at the same time, as you understand, you've been doing this a long time, like, that you have to let these people have their journey, and however they choose to or decide the decisions they make. Right. And I knew this was going to be an awesome time with you, because I just, I feel your spirit, you're lighting up the room. Like, I'm just really enthralled in what you're saying. And because, like, when you started, you're right. When you're telling me about the rejection, I'm kind of going back, like, and I'm seeing, like, the old movies where the men look at this woman come into the room and they're already like dismissing her, and she hasn't even said, like, you don't even know. And she's like, no, because she's a woman. She doesn't belong here. Right. And like we were talking about before the podcast, right? I have that sometimes, that negative self-talk that creeps up and goes, Max, you have no business talking to Jan, right? Like, she's up here. And then, but God goes, that's that's not true, Max. And you put me at ease, and we get to have this amazing conversation about the work you do. And it's just amazing to hear, right? Because when people think of law enforcement, right, they always get that image of, or especially nowadays, right, like good cop, bad cop. It's not always like that. I've had officers like really kind of look at me with that look, like, I want to help you, but you got to help yourself, like, like, what, you went from this to the here, and like, let's figure this out. And but thank God that I got a nudge from a judge, and I'm here 21 years later, right, sober, because a judge who normally did not give second chances gave me a third chance.
Wow.
And so I've run, and then this came along, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to just, share people's stories with the world, who truly, no matter what they're doing, if you listen to their story, is this human really loves other people and wants to help, right? And to make the world a better place, however that looks like. In your case, it's forensic, science, white collar crime. And and that world can be brutal. It's not just like what you see, you know what I mean? Those guys can be very slick and scary. And, just because they wear a white collar doesn't mean they're any less dangerous than, the guy that's sitting in a prison cell.
I have 9 pages of security incidents, and they've tried to run me off the road, slashed my tires. It's still happening today. But as we continue to stay on our paths,
Right.
we get these nudges. And I'm thrilled that people looked at you, felt and sensed all of the potential. You just needed to have one more person believe in you, and you were going to do it. You were going to take off, and there you are. That's what it sounds to me. Now, and I want to just say this too. Do you know how honored I feel that you would want to share that with me, that you shared it with? Do you know how honored I feel that you would be so truly real? This is it. We need this. We need this as a society. We need this as a culture. This will help so much if people start to realize that part of our way forward is to become more authentic. And, you know, you and I talked about how I am working on this book that we're now in the pre-publication phase of. But what I wanted to mention was there were nudges that came to me, just as you had 3 from that wonderful judge. I had 3 conversations that led me to the creation of this book. And the first was with my supervisor during my exit interview at this residential treatment facility. And she asked, Jan, what was it? What do you think you did that made the kids and their families feel so impacted by your style, your approach? What about you do you think resonated? And I said simply, well, I truly love those kids and their families. She smiled. I was ready to go to the next question, but the look on her face indicated that she felt there was more to it, but that I didn't have a clue what that was. The second conversation came a few years later during a conversation with some federal agents. Now, we've talked about the difficulties in blending into the culture. Now let me share with you that these are my buddies, okay? And the joking, the teasing, helping me cope with everything. I blended in as I am, okay? So one time, shoes are up on the desk. They're all real casual, being who they are, and I'm dropping off another project, okay? And they say to me, Jan Schwartz, how does every project you bring to us turn into a case? This time when I was asked a question about what I was doing that might be differently, I responded with, I have eyes that see. I have a 6th sense. But the third conversation led to the creation of this new book. And this came when I was promoting last summer with Oscar, which is my first book. It was very difficult to write because Oscar was our golden retriever, and the book is about the discovery, the adventure we went on together, where he found his own cure for his cancer. But it was very hard to write. So to cheer myself, and perhaps you're the same way, if I'm going to have to do something very, very difficult, I have to also be doing something else that's really uplifting and cheerful, and that balances me out. So I began to post creative tips on my Facebook page. And so many of my Facebook friends began to enjoy them. And during a conversation with a Facebook friend who had been an Associated Press bureau chief of a major American city, he asked, Jan, how on earth are you coming up with these tips that everyone is enjoying and talking about? This time, I was completely surprised at my response. I said, Dan, imagine 3 interrelated circles. The top left represents mental intelligence, or IQ. The top right represents emotional intelligence, or EQ. And below It is a circle representing spiritual intelligence, or SQ. The area common to all three circles is where I find my knowing. That's it, Dan. And he said, Jan, write that down. That's your next book. And so the area common to all three of the intelligences is what I now refer to as authentic intelligence, or AI plus.
I love it.
So it is this new project that I am excited to just say that I believe this is a therapeutic tool. It's a personal action methodology that when you're stuck, you can look at the three circles and decide, am I spending a lot of time in IQ? How much time do I participate in activities that are related to my emotional intelligence? Do I have any activities or thoughts or statements that reflect my spiritual intelligence? And of course, I'm briefly, sketching it out this way because, of course, there's a definition for mental intelligence, emotional intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. But that's the understanding is that we can tap into these intelligences if we feed them regularly. Not our egos, but if we feed our intelligences, then when the time comes for an important decision, or if it's an emergency, what will happen is that because of the richness of our wisdom in our authentic intelligence, because of all the ways we have fed and enriched our other intelligences, we're going to do a much better job in our decision making and our judgments. And so it's an exciting new beginning to think about, well, let's think about this. I could follow this if I'm stuck. If I'm feeling like, I'm still feeling a little unsure about how I want to begin the new year. Okay, that's good that you're person, if a person says that, you're realizing you don't have a lot of energy. Talking to yourself, you might say, well, is it my energy that's low? Well, what do I want to do with my year? Okay, so look at the three circles. Think about mental intelligence. What do you want to do to feed your mental intelligence this year? If you want your year to end up in a way where you say, this has been a fantastic year. If you want to feel better about yourself, if you want to have clarity, if you want to have true happiness, it is really building on mental intelligence, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is not necessarily being religious, but having a sense of spiritual underpinning. And emotional intelligence is broken down into 5 categories. There's so much to talk about here, but the concept that everyone listening can start today, they can step into the 3 interrelated circles that lift up our 4th intelligence, our authentic intelligence, because we will need it to thrive and to survive. The world is demanding so much of us, and we will never have to feel stuck or feel like things are not working out. We know what to do. We can go to create those circles and say, all right, which circle do I want to work on? This is something that families can do as well. Thank you for letting me talk about this and share my excitement.
And I can't wait till your book comes out, because we'll bring you back so we can really dive into that. But here, I love what you just talked about, because like in recovery, I always preach, right? Like mind, body, spirit, right? If you want to have a well-rounded, good sobriety, you got to work on all areas of your life. Your mind, what are you putting into your brain, right? your body? What are you exercising? Are you putting good food into your body? And then spirit, right? Doesn't mean you need to be religious, but what are you doing to fill your soul?
Yes.
Right. And it sounds like, because, like growing up, at least when I was younger, it's all like IQ, right? How smart is this kid? How, let's get him smart. Let's teach him a math, history. I never heard of that growing up about spiritual IQ.
Right.
Or emotional intelligence or spiritual intelligence, right? And now it seems like people are understanding to be more authentic and a well-rounded human being. Yes, we have to have, be smart about the things we do, but are we spiritually intelligent? Like, are we praying or whatever, that is for you? And then emotionally intelligent, right? Like, how are you flying off the handle because someone cut you off on the freeway?
Wow.
Or, the opposite end is like what I do now is I just wave and go, oh, okay, that's your lane. You can have it. You know what I mean? So I don't get all, the old me would have been like, I'm going to chase him home and say, you took my lane. But this has been an amazing time. And I want to ask you some questions. Like, as you see, I wrote a book. It's the same name as my podcast. So going through what you've been through, what does fearless mean to you? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Well, it's about living with full belief and full trust that what's right for you will come to you. And understanding that the universe is filled with opportunities to grow, and you have to have the courage. And so you have to, in being fearless, you have to inhale courage. I met my husband on a blind date in New York City. I had to have courage because I was working at a battered women's shelter in Beaver, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
I had never met him. When he called on this Friday afternoon, the plane was taking off, and he called, in the morning. And I said, sure, I'd love to meet you there. And I had just started the job 2 weeks before that. I guess that's one example of inhale the courage,
right?
Exhale the doubt. And in that situation of traveling to New York City to meet him, and sure, I remember once I got there, was like, what have you done? What are you doing? Okay, I've walked the path. Inhale courage, exhale doubt, and step forward with conviction.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Never thought of it that way, but that's a great way to look at that. Inhale courage. That's kind of like my thing when I tell people, like, you're struggling, I go, inhale God, right? Like, breathe in God and exhale the problem, and I love it, Jan. Yes. So my next question, and seeing I put a Y in happiness, knowing I put that Y in there, what does happiness mean to you? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Happiness is a feeling we have when we live our lives seeking enrichment that is uplifting. Focusing on the day, beginning the day with my choices today are going to be devoted to uplifting others, uplifting myself, focused on seeking enrichment that is uplifting. And it's also about creating a lifestyle that is centered on wishing the best for others. I understand that for some people that is very hard to do. I guess I was just so impacted by those teachers that I had so early on, that the love they freely gave to me was something that I was like a sponge, because I have this ability to care and to love, and I just can't hold it back. So I cannot be more excited for someone else when something good happens to them, because it's so affirming about what the principles of life and the promises that we learned when we were just beginning to understand faith and how God works. It works. The principles work. Follow them. It works. And trusting that the path of living is, if we do have the courage to inhale, the courage, and if we do have the courage to take the steps and to push aside or exhale the doubt, and if we do have the courage to then step forward with conviction, what we're going to end up with is a feeling at the end of our lives that we have had the fullness of stepping into a life that was created for us. And everyone listening has their own special manifestation of what fullness is just for them. So the goal for me is to, would it be understood if I use the words, it's emotional freedom.
Yeah.
It's a sense of yes, I'm here. I'm here. I've had all of this that I went through and overcame, and everything leads to something better, and that can be trusted. It's another one of those promises, and one day it will all be worth it.
Absolutely. I love it. Wow. It's been an amazing time, Jan. Thank you so much.
So great.
So that leads me to ask you, if people want to connect with you, they want to reach out, and they want to get your book when that comes, how do they get a hold of you? Where can they contact you?
My website is Jan Schwartz, and that's Jan. Schwartz is SCHWARTZ.US. It's real simple. That's my website. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook. Please reach out. Please keep in touch. And one thing I want to just leave your listeners with is something that they can think about for the rest of their day, or take a conversation at lunch, perhaps as they're walking around. Just take this conversation with you and say to yourself, what intelligence do I use the most? Which of my 4 intelligences do I use the most?
I love it. I love it.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you. You heard her, everybody. But she's not quite off the hook just yet, because I have my favorite question that I love asking I always save the best for last. And it goes like this, Jan. What is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. And on the bad days, on the days when it's especially difficult and the strain is there, perhaps not from something going on with you, but from something that a loved one is going through, look at yourself in the mirror, a good long look, and say to yourself, look at who I am. I am the sum of all of the good things I have done thus far in my life. I can bless this day. I can bless this week. I can bless this month, and I can bless this year, because I know that I will learn, and I will grow, and I will love, and I will live better than I ever have before. It's a promise.
That's right. I love it.
Thank
you, Jan, for being here. This has been one amazing time. We could probably go on for hours and I've got questions, but I'm going to bring you back, promise, and we'll have another episode. But you heard her, everybody. If Dr. Jan made you think, if Dr. Jan taught you something, if she made you think, if she made you smile, and my famous, if Dr. Jan made you go, I like that, Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. Again, this is Max from the Fearless Happyness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happyness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happyness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happyness.